Imagine being so wealthy that simply spending your money changes the economy of entire countries. It sounds impossible today, yet over 700 years ago, one man did exactly that. His name was Mansa Musa ***, the ruler of the Mali Empire, and many historians believe he was the richest person to have ever lived. His fortune was so vast that modern economists struggle to estimate its true value. But his story is about far more than gold. It is a story of power, ambition, knowledge, and an empire that history has unfairly pushed into the shadows. When people think of the greatest empires in history, they often picture ancient Rome, Egypt, or the Mongols. Yet in the heart of West Africa stood an empire so rich that merchants crossed deserts for months just to trade with it. This was the Mali Empire, a kingdom built on vast resources, thriving trade routes, and remarkable leadership. At its peak, it stretched across much of modern-day Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Niger, and several neighboring regions. It became one of the largest and wealthiest empires the medieval world had ever seen. The foundation of Mali's wealth lay beneath its soil. Hidden within its lands were some of the richest gold mines on earth. During the 14th century, gold was one of the world's most valuable resources. It fueled trade, financed kingdoms, and symbolized ultimate power. Historians believe that nearly half of the Old World's gold supply came from West Africa during this period, and much of it passed through the Mali Empire. But gold alone could not create a great civilization. Mali also controlled major trade routes that crossed the Sahara Desert. Huge camel caravans traveled for weeks through the scorching sands, carrying gold, salt, ivory, spices, and other valuable goods. Salt, surprisingly, was almost as valuable as gold in some regions because it was essential for preserving food and maintaining health. By controlling both gold and salt, Mali became the economic powerhouse of its time. Long before Mansa Musa became king, the empire had already begun its rise under the leadership of Sundiata Keita, the legendary founder of Mali. Through military victories and wise leadership, he united rival kingdoms and established a stable government. His achievements laid the foundation for generations of prosperity. The empire continued to grow, and each ruler inherited a kingdom stronger than the last. Then, around the year 1312, everything changed. A new ruler ascended the throne. His name was Musa Keita, though history remembers him as Mansa Musa. The title Mansa meant king or emperor, but in reality, his authority resembled that of a modern-day superpower. He ruled over millions of people, controlled enormous natural resources, and commanded one of the largest economies on earth. Unlike many rulers remembered only for war, Mansa Musa understood that true strength came from prosperity, learning, and stability. He invested in trade, encouraged education, supported architecture, and strengthened relationships with neighboring kingdoms. Under his leadership, the Mali Empire reached heights no one had imagined possible. The stories of his wealth quickly became legendary. His royal court was filled with treasures crafted from pure gold. His palaces displayed extraordinary luxury. His armies were equipped with the finest weapons available, while merchants throughout the empire benefited from secure trade routes protected by the king's authority. Every caravan entering Mali contributed taxes that further increased the empire's riches. Gold flowed into the royal treasury faster than it could be counted. Modern historians have tried to calculate Mansa Musa's personal fortune, but many admit that it cannot be measured accurately. Unlike today's billionaires, whose wealth consists of company shares and investments, Musa controlled entire gold mines, vast territories, agricultural lands, trade routes, and taxes collected across one of the world's largest empires. Some modern estimates place his fortune at hundreds of billions of dollars, while others argue it was effectively beyond calculation. Yet despite possessing unimaginable wealth, Mansa Musa sought something greater than riches. He wanted the world to recognize the greatness of Mali. At that time, much of Europe and the Middle East knew little about the powerful kingdoms hidden beyond the Sahara Desert. Many foreign traders had heard rumors of endless gold, but few truly understood the scale of Mali's prosperity. Mansa Musa decided to change that forever. He announced that he would undertake one of the most important journeys in the Islamic world, the pilgrimage to Mecca, known as the Hajj. Every Muslim who is physically and financially able is encouraged to make this sacred journey at least once in their lifetime. For Mansa Musa, it was both a deeply spiritual mission and an opportunity to place the Mali Empire on the map of the known world. Preparations began on an astonishing scale. This would not be an ordinary royal trip. It would become one of the greatest processions history had ever witnessed. Thousands of soldiers, officials, servants, merchants, and attendants prepared to travel across deserts stretching for thousands of kilometers. Hundreds of camels were loaded with supplies, food, clothing, and, most importantly, gold. Not a few bags of gold, not a few chests, an almost unimaginable amount. Each camel reportedly carried heavy loads of pure gold, while members of the royal procession wore luxurious clothing and carried golden staffs that reflected the empire's immense prosperity. Everywhere the caravan traveled, it became impossible to ignore. Villages stopped to watch. Merchants spread stories. Local rulers eagerly awaited the arrival of the mysterious African king, whose wealth seemed to have no limit. No one along the route could have imagined what would happen next. The generosity of one man was about to rewrite the economy of entire cities, leaving consequences that would be remembered for years after he had returned home. As Mansa Musa's enormous caravan crossed the Sahara Desert, stories of his wealth spread faster than the caravan itself. Traders rushed ahead to announce his arrival, and by the time he reached major cities, crowds gathered simply to witness the legendary ruler from West Africa. His journey was unlike anything the medieval world had ever seen. Historical accounts describe a procession of tens of thousands of people, including soldiers, servants, merchants, scholars, and officials. Hundreds of camels carried food, supplies, and massive quantities of gold. The caravan stretched for miles, moving slowly across the desert like a golden river. When Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo, then one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world, his visit immediately attracted the attention of the ruling elite. The Sultan of Egypt welcomed him with great respect, recognizing that this was no ordinary king. Diplomats, merchants, and scholars all wanted to meet the mysterious ruler whose empire had become famous for its limitless wealth. But it wasn't his royal clothing or impressive caravan that people remembered most. It was his generosity. Everywhere he traveled, Mansa Musa gave away astonishing amounts of gold. He donated generously to the poor, rewarded local leaders, purchased expensive goods, and funded the construction of mosques. Merchants who sold products to his caravan were paid in gold. Beggars received gold. Religious institutions received gold. Friends and strangers alike benefited from his extraordinary generosity. At first, the people of Cairo celebrated. Gold seemed to flow endlessly through the city. Markets became busier than ever, businesses flourished, and people believed they were witnessing an age of incredible prosperity. But economics follows rules that even the richest king cannot escape. As more and more gold entered the local economy, the metal itself became less valuable. Prices began to rise. Goods that once cost a certain amount suddenly became more expensive. Inflation spread throughout the region because there was simply too much gold in circulation. What had started as an act of kindness unintentionally disrupted the economy for years. Historians believe it took a long time for markets to recover. Even centuries later, this event remains one of history's most remarkable examples of how the actions of a single individual could influence an entire economic system. Ironically, Mansa Musa never intended to cause financial problems. His generosity came from genuine religious devotion and a desire to help others. According to some historical accounts, he later realized the economic impact of his spending and even attempted to reduce the damage by borrowing gold back at high interest before leaving Egypt. While historians debate the exact details, they agree on one point. His pilgrimage became legendary because of the unimaginable wealth he distributed. Yet, perhaps Mansa Musa's greatest achievement had nothing to do with gold. When he returned to the Mali Empire, he focused on something far more valuable: knowledge. He invited architects, scholars, teachers, and religious leaders from across the Islamic world to settle in his kingdom. Their arrival transformed Mali into one of the most respected centers of learning in Africa. At the heart of this transformation stood the city of Timbuktu. Today, many people recognize Timbuktu only as a name associated with somewhere distant or mysterious. But during Mansa Musa's reign, it became one of the world's greatest centers of education, trade, and culture. Magnificent mosques rose above the city skyline. Libraries filled with handwritten manuscripts attracted scholars from across Africa and the Middle East. Students traveled thousands of miles to study subjects ranging from mathematics and astronomy to medicine, law, literature, and theology. Some historians estimate that the libraries of Timbuktu eventually held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. At a time when many parts of Europe had limited access to books, Timbuktu was preserving and expanding human knowledge. This was the true legacy of Mansa Musa. He understood that lasting greatness could not be measured only by wealth. Gold could be spent, palaces could crumble, armies could be defeated, but education could shape generations. Under his leadership, the Mali Empire became known not only for its riches, but also for its scholarship, diplomacy, architecture, and stability. Foreign maps began to include the Mali Empire, and European cartographers even drew Mansa Musa holding a golden nugget to symbolize his extraordinary wealth. For many outside Africa, he became the face of unimaginable prosperity. However, no empire lasts forever. After Mansa Musa's death around 1337, later rulers struggled to maintain the same level of unity and effective leadership. Internal conflicts weakened the government. Important trade routes shifted. Neighboring kingdoms challenged Mali's power, and over time the empire gradually lost much of its territory. By the 15th century, new powers such as the Songhai Empire had begun to dominate West Africa. Although Mali continued to exist for many years, it never again reached the incredible heights it had achieved under Mansa Musa. Even so, his influence never truly disappeared. His story survived through oral traditions, historical writings, and ancient maps. Modern historians continue to study his reign as one of the greatest examples of leadership, economic power, and cultural development in medieval history. His life also challenges many common misconceptions about African history. Long before European colonial expansion, powerful African kingdoms had built sophisticated governments, thriving economies, international trade networks, and world-renowned centers of education. The Mali Empire was proof that greatness has never belonged to one continent alone. Today, when people debate who was the richest person in history, names like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or John D. Rockefeller often come to mind. Yet compared to Mansa Musa, many historians argue those fortunes simply cannot compare. His wealth was tied to the resources of an empire that controlled an enormous share of the world's gold supply, making his fortune almost impossible to express in modern dollars. But perhaps asking how much he was worth misses the point. The more important question is what he chose to do with that wealth. He invested in learning. He strengthened his empire. He connected cultures across continents. And through one unforgettable journey, he left a mark on history so powerful that people still tell his story more than 700 years later. The next time someone says history is boring, remember the king whose generosity accidentally changed an economy, whose empire shined with gold, and whose vision transformed a city into one of the greatest centers of knowledge the world has ever known. Sometimes, the most incredible stories are not legends at all. They are history.